Hello, this is Rivered Audio, and I have received many comments and questions about Class D amplifiers, and today I'm going to share why I am not focusing on Class D technology. And although I understand and I know that it has potential, and I'm really glad to hear examples um, for cases when people could make them work and they are really happy with it, like Klaus with his Altec A4s, like he made Class D technology work for them and he's enjoying them, and I really root for all of you who do that and who find beauty and joy with Class D technology, and uh, and I'm really thankful for those suggestions when you want me to try out Class D. However, now I'm going to share with you what was my experience with Class D, and I'm also going to share you that why I am working with tube amplifiers and why I am focusing on them, and I hope you will understand it as well. And the most important part about it is that I suggest for everyone to look around, be informed, learn about different technologies, what people think of them, what are their physical shortcomings, what are their potentials, what are the loudspeakers and sources that they work with, and make your informed decision, and then listen to them, and then choose what's your heart's desire is, and choose what is to your preference and go on that route. So now I'm going to share with you guys my experience with Class D, and as you see, this is a Class D amplifier, and this is my little T amp. Maybe you guys know, if you've been in audio for 2 decades or more, that this is one of the first ever Class D amplifiers. So when Class D technology came out, and we started seeing some serious amplifiers in close to $1,000 range coming out with Class D chips, and at that time came out this Dayton Audio T amp, and it was like under $40, really something truly bargain, really minimalistic design. It doesn't have any weight, and you see in the bottom there's this the big part of this absolutely tiny chassis is this battery holder. If I can open it with one hand, no, I can't. Okay, I would need two hands to open it, but basically like 80% of the volume of this miniature thing is the battery holder packet inside, and it puts out, I think it's like 2 times 10 watts, so 10 watts per channel, and it has an external power source. You can plug your Volvart in it, and that's how you can do it. Hook up your loudspeakers, and it has a volume control in it, so it's a nice comfy little thing, and you can take it with you and so on. However, when it came out, the entire DIY audio community realized that that if you run it from the wall, from a Volvart, it's pretty junky. It's like really a second-rate amplifier. But when you put in the batteries and run them off the batteries, it totally transforms, and it's quite something. And we of course we tried it out at that time, me and many of my audio friends. All of us bought one of these little guys to try it out, and of course from battery it's a transformational experience compared to just from the wall. However, if you run it from battery, it's kind of a nuisance that you have to change the batteries periodically. So it's not a practical suggestion to use it with batteries if you are a dedicated listener and you are serious about putting hours and hours and hours of music every day in your life. So my experience with this amp was that my audio buddy Charlie, he also had one of these, and we had an audio party, an audio get together at his place. So he invited me and all my audio friends to have a listen to his T amp that he was running from battery, and it was hooked up to his Edgar horns. Those were horn speakers made by the late Bruce Edgar, and those used the louder full range drivers. And Bruce, he made two of those loudspeakers, two of those cabinets total, and Charlie had one of them. So that was a pretty special loudspeaker. It was about 100, I think maybe 101 dB efficient, I mean sensitive. That means like almost 10% efficient, because the efficiency is really the percentage of power that you translate into acoustic energy from the driving power, and sensitivity is the dB per watt meter rating. And so we were using that loudspeaker with this little TM, and we used Charlie's front end, which was a Micromega stage 3 CD player, modified just like I was using at that time. And he also had a micro Seiki turntable, which is something truly wonderful. And we were using them as sources. And we were, and he also had an SNB transformer volume control that we used as instead of a preamp. So basically we used that system of his, and we were totally astonished by the sound, because it had a fantastic bass, it had open top end, it was dynamic and clarity to it, and we enjoyed ourselves tremendously. All of us, there were about a dozen of us, and out of those dozen people, there was so all of us had totally different preferences, hearing preferences. So like we had totally different audio systems, but everyone thought that, wow, this is like pretty fantastic. And we were just extremely excited to have something like less than $40, costing almost nothing, this tiny little amplifier with this new technology. And it's just so good that all of us were just amazed that, man, like this truly kicks ass, this is just insane. And we were making just jokes among ourselves that we didn't even want to plug in a tube amplifier after that, because we were afraid that the tube amp will not catch up with the Class D technology, that the bass will suffer, it won't be as dynamic, it won't be as quiet, and so on. But anyway, curiosity won out on that day, and we plugged in Charlie's Yamamoto amplifier with type 45 tubes after the Class T amp, and man, all of us, without exception, were shocked, like really shocked beyond belief to our core, because the difference between the T amp and which we thought when we were hearing it, that it was like mighty fantastic. Even my mentor Stu was there, and then he also found the T amp just like, man, this is like really punches way above its price point, and it really puts like what the sound we heard there put most amplifiers to shame, truly. And it really brought to question like so we don't need to put any money into amps, just buy this tiny little amp, run it off battery, and all you need to do is just keep buying new batteries, and that's it, you are set. But when we changed for the Yamamoto the difference was so night and day that all of us, without exception, we were struck with awe. And the difference was that the presentation was different that the Yamamoto gave us. We heard music. It was not sounds anymore. We were not listening to bass. We were not listening to sound stage or depth or something like abstract phenomena like that. But the music became flesh and blood. We started hearing music. Our thoughts were not about technology anymore. We forgot that word completely and entirely. And we started talking about the music we heard, about musicians, music instruments, and all of us, without exception, thought that Class D, no matter how we thought how good it was, but when we swapped in the Yamamoto, the difference was so night and day that none of us thought that Class D will ever come anywhere close to the tubes to Yamamoto that we heard. And I'm talking about a dozen audio guys with absolutely night and day totally different hearing, totally different preferences, what we like in amplification with speakers and music genres and so on. And all of us thought that it's just like so much difference between the two technologies that we can't even comprehend to what how big the gasp, the chasm is between the two. And my mentors too has been up to that point very, very enthusiastic about Class D technology, and we talked with him a lot, like probably hundreds of hours, hundreds of emails. But after that experience, we have not talked a word about Class D amps, and I have not seen my mentor look into that technology anymore. So it was kind of like a sobering thought that okay, this is really, really, really far away. And although it has potential, and one wants to find something bargain, it's it's something much, much better than trying to find maybe even like other solid state amplifiers in up to like $2,000-3,000 price category. But if you have a tube amp, the level and sophistication of a Yamamoto, mm, that is in a completely entirely different league compared to the Class D technology. And true, I know, and I strongly suspect that since then time has passed, and Class D technology has improved a lot, and that's what I'm hearing from you guys. That many of you have had wonderful experiences with the current Class D technology, but sadly that train has left for me. I am not boarding it, and I don't want to get back on it. Number one thing is that because I am not a Class D expert, I am not a solid state expert. Uh, I, I like to think that I know vacuum tube technology profoundly, and I know that I have a lot of knowledge and on application of vacuum tubes that the majority of people I think doesn't have, and I seem to have put it to good use, um, and it is something that I know how to do. I have contributed to bettering that knowledge, to finding out applications. I have learned thousands of hours of knowledge of applications and technology from my mentor on using vacuum tubes. And one of my main purpose of my channel here is to share this knowledge with you. I do not have any knowledge on Class D technology, and that's the main reason I don't want to tinker with them, because I am not an expert there, and Class D technology will benefit if someone else works on it, not me. I can do my best with vacuum tubes, and when I give advice for you guys on vacuum tubes, that's useful and that's proven, and I have over 2 decades behind it. And that's why I don't want to tinker with Class D. I know I would have maybe like 10 times the hits, 10 times or maybe 100 times the subscribers if I would just, jump on the Class D bandwagon. But I don't want to, because I don't feel that I can contribute a lot to it. And also, my listening preference, uh, I have heard since the Class D amp other amplifiers which are Class D, and I was each experience just made my impression about Class D amps solidify even more, and of course they are getting better and better, but what will work for you is the time and effort you put into something. And the average level of Class D is extremely low, and of course we can make it much higher, but the average level, like, let's see, this is one of my basic Darling amplifiers, and the cost to build this is something in the few $100 range. That's also the cost of like any generic higher quality Class D amplifier. And if I'm I have that question, that choice, that do I want to spend my hard-earned money on parts for vacuum tube amp, or on a modern Class D amp, I will go for the vacuum tubes, because I know that vacuum tube technology gives me the sound that I want to hear, because my hearing, what I like as a sound, is what a violinist likes. So you can, if I know you guys don't know me, so that's why I'm saying that you can imagine my hearing as if you were talking to a violinist. So what the preference of a violinist is, that is my preference. And if you are following my suggestions, then if you happen to be a violinist, you will be in heaven, and everything I recommend for you, that will be the best advice you ever hear. And the further your thinking about music is, the further it is from a violinist, the less relevant my advice will be for you. And I was just hearing today, like a few hours before I'm shooting this video, my Darling amp driving these 92 dB per watt meter efficient Alnico speakers, and I, as a source, I was using my computer and streaming from YouTube some music, and there was violin in it. And of course, like YouTube, computer, even the interconnect is a really cheapo one, so not high quality source, but the tone of the violin and the authenticity was just 10 times, maybe 100 times better than anything I ever heard in any showroom of $100,000 plus systems. When I listen to many of the showroom settings, or I would say like 99% of them, the hair on my back stands on edge when I hear violins. It's just awful. And that's one thing with the Class D amp, is that the Class D amp representation with violin, it just doesn't mix. It's night and day. And I don't think that can be ever reconciled. I am very positive on Class D technology, but violin representation, I think that will never happen with Class D. I hope I am wrong, but they are that far away. Like a jazz quartet or Diana Cross singing, stuff like that. I can imagine Class D working for that, but violin, I don't think so. And you have guessed, guys, violin is one of my favorite instruments, and that's the number one priority I am building my system towards, is that they should play violin pretty well. And this is one system which is like super duper basic, I would say. These loudspeakers, I scavenged them from a TV set from the 60s. These are 16 ohm Alnico drivers, overall drivers. I built the cabinets, no crossover. This is my little darling amplifier. I'm running them with 807 tubes, and it's a direct coupled version, so it's a little bit more advanced than my basic darling that I showed how to build as a first project. I will share about this more advanced darling later on, but for that you guys need to build first your baby darling or your pure darling, which is relatively safe because this guy has 700 volts inside. So this is a build project that you can tackle after you had at least a decade of experience working with high voltages. Yeah, so coming back to the Class D, I think Class D can be really wonderful, but lately I had a re-listen to this little Class D amp. I tried to set it up here upstairs as an extra system as part of it, and I was just beyond disappointed with it. It sounded much worse than what I remembered how it sounded 15 years ago, and that's it. So I hope everyone found what he was or she was looking for, and stay tuned. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.